Just slow down. Just slow down. I know you're on the 5 right now. Some of you are on the 110. Some of you are on the 134, the 170, the 405, the 14, the 210, the 55, the 57, the 91, 605, the 710, 22. Just slow down. Or do like me. Just get off the freeway and take surface streets. It was, we talk about, we talk about how bad it was on a given day, how it took so long to get to the office or to get home. No, today was a day unlike other days. I left my house around 2:30, driving surface streets. Why? Because I just wanted to be safe, or I felt safer on surface streets. And it took me more than hour and a half. It was closer to 2 hours to get to the office today. But I wasn't stressed. I wasn't driving very fast. Was not in a hurry. And so it was a much more reasonable, manageable ride. And if you're on the freeways right now, just slow down and take your time. Because I know that there are a lot of people, well, not me personally, but I'm saying I know that there are a lot of people who got into accidents today, who might have imperiled themselves, put other people in danger, and it's not necessary. So what if you get there 15 minutes later than you originally hoped or planned? At least you got there, hopefully without an accident. The rain has been no joke. The flooding, we know about the evacuation orders to Sierra Madre and other places. This is the rain that we thought we were going to get some weeks ago. It is now here. The flooding is now here. And I know, Mark Ronner, good evening, Mark Ronner, you had some information on that as well.
I'd say thank you for that as usual, but today was such a terrifying white-knuckled death ride into the office that I'm not feeling very grateful. And if I can add to your tips to people, if I've left a 1 car length space between me and the guy in front of me,
yes,
you don't need
try to slide in there.
This is not the day to zoom in there. Please.
It's interesting you said white knuckle because Tuwala Sharp used the exact same terminology. When he says white knuckle, I really have to take him seriously.
Oh, yeah, it's much more serious if he says it.
I'm telling you, the tips of my knuckles were a bright white, and I was shocked at how frightened I was on the trip in here.
Yeah, here's how serious it was. I was too afraid to take a hand off the steering wheel to flip anybody off.
Yeah.
Safety first.
Yeah. All those spaces in between my car, it didn't mean a damn thing. Trucks wanted to get in front of me, splashing water in front of me, of course, which had my heart in my throat.
Worried about hydroplaning?
Yes.
And that's another reason why on days like this, when I can really plan in advance and the rain was coming and I knew that I had a swath of time that I could carve out just to drive, let me just get on the surface streets. And I took Western Avenue north, and it's actually a physically shorter distance, but of course with traffic lights and traffic, it usually takes longer than obviously driving the freeways, but it was okay. I much more enjoyed the serenity of driving the surface streets than dealing with the craziness of the highways and byways. It was something else today.
Now, you guys both drive more or less tanks. So if anything does happen, you're not likely to be, pulped.
Yeah, this is one of those times where, and for those who don't know, I got my first SUV back in September. I always had subcompact cars. One, because I always liked driving stick, and those are about the only cars that you could get which still had a stick, a manual transmission, and a clutch. So I got a Honda CR-V, and it's a regular size SUV, not a subcompact, not one of the bigger SUVs, but it's a regular size SUV. And it does make the overall driving experience much more enjoyable. I'm not cramped. It's not a luxury SUV, but it's comfortable. I have enough room, and I don't feel like I'm dealing with unnecessary cramped quarters when you're trying to deal with the weather and also larger vehicles. They may not be able to see me in that subcompact Honda Civic, but they're damn sure going to see my CR-V. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's weather like this that makes you realize if another car so much as touches my normal human smallish car, it's like ramming into a lawnmower. You're not going to survive that.
Yeah, I'm not going to lose too many. I want to take some damage, but I'm not going to lose. Put it that way.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to out Stefan which car he drives, but he needs to be a little careful out there as well. He might get run over. They might just take them out.
I would probably tear straight through Stefan's car. Straight through it. Knife through butter. Pow!
Well, you're driving to all of the equivalent of the Batman tumbler from those Christopher Nolan movies. I mean, you could pretty much drive over most cars in that tank of yours.
You know, we are comparable. Swallows and I, we're comparable in size. Yeah, I'm taking out Stefan. That's for damn sure.
Yeah.
But the thing is, now your chance to get a tank like that is decreased, because I've seen that, say, on a $80,000 truck, that's going up to $100,000 because of the tariffs.
Well. Let's wait. They've paused the tariffs for a month. President Trump made it clear to allay fears, because like I said yesterday, watch the markets. Evidently, there were some indicators, such as futures, and also concern from pushback from countries like Canada that maybe they were moving a little too fast. And the president decided today to make the announcement that they're going to wait a month before they implement all the tariffs.
But they did do the auto tariff. That's the one that they're like, hey, we're cool there. But like fruits, vegetables, there's a lot of stuff that we'll end up having to pay a lot for that you wouldn't be able to afford.
Oh, well.
That new car anyway.
Oh, well.
Also, can we recheck what SUV is Mark buying? The Cadillac 600?
Oh, this is just from news reports that I've seen that look at averages. I have actually been kind of shopping around with non-urgency for an SUV, and I had like 4 of them bookmarked to go back to. They were all gone when I came back from work last night. People are snapping these things up because they know what's around the corner.
Yes.
They are. And look, if I can recommend anything, I swear by a hybrid. I was talking about this with Stefan a few weeks ago. I don't know what took me so long. Maybe it was just marketed poorly. It wasn't explained adequately. If you would have just said, hey, Mo, you get this Honda CR-V, you're going to get more than 500 miles to the tank, I would have said, shoot, sign me up. Because my Honda Civic was only getting like 300.
I will never, ever, ever, ever go back. Like, once you get in a hybrid and you realize, it's game over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I last filled my car up on, I was going to say Thursday, but I think it was like Friday night. Or actually, no, it was actually even Saturday morning because Friday I didn't go shopping or anything. Saturday morning when I went shopping, I said, you know what? I'm going to put some gas in. It's now Wednesday and I'm at a half a tank. So that's from Saturday morning to right now.
Look, I thought about getting an EV, a straight up EV. I had range anxiety, if only because I have somewhat of a commute. So I wasn't exactly sure it was going to fit my lifestyle for the frequency that I drive. It also was much more expensive, almost 2-to-1 to the cost of a hybrid. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to save money on the cost of the car, and I'll save money on gas. My wife has a plug-in hybrid, and you know we've saved a lot of money, and neither of us felt comfortable with a full-on EV. But yeah, at once, and it demonstrated to me you needed someone to actually walk you through it and explain it to you. Here are the pluses, here are the minuses, here are the benefits of getting a hybrid versus an EV. And it made all the difference in the world.
You know, Mo, I see you in one of them fancy cyber trucks.
Yeah, and you're absolutely 100% wrong.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that has nothing to do with Elon Musk. It doesn't help, but it has nothing to do with him. I just think that they're ugly vehicles and they're not practical. If I'm going to get a truck, I need to one, at least that it can act like a truck and do truck things.
Oh, they're laugh out loud ugly, but still, I don't rule them out, Mo. I can see you behind the wheel of one of those.
They're ruled out. What is it, like 100,000 and, you know.
Ish.
Yeah, ish.
Sure.
Ish.
Yeah, I'm not a cars guy like that. I had a Honda S2000, which was when I bought 99, which was 40 something thousand. That was my most expensive car. I'm usually subcompacts, and I don't spend my money there, and I don't want to have an outrageous car payment.
I like the footage of them being completely immobilized by 2 inches of snow.
I need a truck to do truck things. Yeah. I need to be, if I'm going to get a truck, I'm going to get me, I don't know, a Chevy Silverado or an F-150, something that I know that can handle truck things.
Yeah, something that comes with a hat, a cowboy hat.
That's right.
Yeah.
And like they have the scrotum hanging on the back.
Jesus, you didn't have to.
Look, my tank, if I put my tank in wet water weather mode, it's going to handle the road a lot better. Now, if I can put some type of scrotum on the back of my vehicle, that would really, really
Stop saying scrotum, everybody. Jesus.
What do you want us to say?
I mean, that's what they have. They sell those. And when you drive and go over them up, they cling.
What do you want us to say? Beans and Franks? I mean, what do you want?
Nothing? If I do a search on Amazon for that, will it pull those up? I'm afraid to do a search on a company computer. Forget that.
Company computer.
No.
Beans and Franks. KFI AM 640. We're live everywhere in the iHeartRadio app. Let's find out what's going on with Kristin Crowley, former LA Fire Department chief, what she's up to now in light of her chance to appeal her firing didn't go so well. So we'll find out what she's up to now when we come back.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
And you know not by now that Kristin Crowley appealed her dismissal as chief for the LA Fire Department, and it probably was not going to turn out any other way. And the vote from the city council was 13-2 in opposition to her being reinstated as chief. We had talked about some of this with the LA City Council President Marquise Harris Dawson as far as his opposition to Chief Crowley, and obviously it indicated how he would vote. But there was a question of what would happen next. Yes, she's still with the fire department. So yes, she's still going to be involved in the day-to-day actions of the department. But it's for a new position or a vacant position. She'll now hold the title of Assistant Chief of LAFD's Operations Valley Bureau. I don't know the hierarchy. I don't know the flow chart, but I can tell that sounds like a significant step down from fire chief. I bring that up because I expect Kristin Crowley to be very active and very vocal going forward about Karen Bass, Mayor Bass, and also what happened during the fires of January. Just because you may demote someone, just because you may have fired someone, it doesn't mean that they go away completely. It doesn't mean that they have been silenced. It doesn't mean that the story is over. And I fully expect Kristin Crowley, and as an extension of that, her supporters, to make life very difficult for Mayor Bass. And that goes back to why I really question why Mayor Bass made that decision at that point. We talked about the ongoing investigations, which would have either bared out Bass's version of the story or Crowley's. And if you think that Mayor Bass did the right thing and she had every reason to fire Crowley, then let the independent investigation and oversight basically verify that, and then you can come out smelling like a rose, like, hey, I'm not making this decision. Obviously, the investigation said that Kristin Crowley made these decisions and made these mistakes, and I'm left with no choice. Now it looks like she was scapegoating. Mayor Bass was scapegoating. And it's not just a question of she said. There will be recommendations. There will be a summation to that investigation. And we'll find out between the two who is more telling the truth or less telling the truth. I am a firm believer, don't create for yourself more problems, especially if you're an elected official and you're basically in campaign mode. She's not officially in campaign mode, but Mayor Bass is obviously running for re-election. And when you don't have first responders, and matter of fact, we're going to talk about Daredevil later on, but the new series on Disney Plus. But there was a line in the first episode of Daredevil, or maybe it was the second episode. Sorry, Tawala. I know you haven't seen it yet, but there was a line, and I know Mark Ronner remembers this, where if you lose law enforcement, or if you lose first responders, you lose the city. And that jumped out at me because it was so applicable to what is going on right here. And I think that Mayor Bass is on the verge of losing first responders. And I would draw a line straight back to this firing in the way it was done. To me, it seemed like it was mean-spirited, and it was done in a way to embarrass Kristin Crowley, and that's just my, read of it. And there's going to be blowback. There's going to be a lot of blowback.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but something that's jumped out at me in your conversation with LA City Council President Marquise Harris Dawson was the fact that this is not a pick from Mayor Bass.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This was not Mayor Bass's pick. This is someone who she inherited to her administration. And when the ish hit the fan, she said, okay, hey, no hard feelings, because I didn't take it as being malicious. I took it as, you know what? Everyone is pointing at me for something that you did wrong. I'm not the fire chief. You're the fire chief. You assured me that the actions I was taking and what was happening within the city were fine. And then when it hits the fan, no, you're going to get it. What I'm seeing most of all is a lot of individuals who, to your point last night, are using this opportunity to just tear Mayor Bass down. This is all a part of we need Mayor Bass out of there campaign. And this is the fuel to that fire.
Agreed.
Nothing more. I think it's a big to do about nothing, if not for the fact that there are so many factions that want Mayor Bass out just because they don't like her.
What happens now is, and this may lead nowhere. In other words, you have the burgeoning recall effort against Mayor Bass. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. Like I discussed before, you're going to have a mayoral election June 2nd of 2026. It's probably not going to go anywhere. But does it damage her and make it more difficult for her to legislate? Does it make it more difficult for her to just do the job as a mayor right now and also run for re-election? It's not a fait accompli. It's not a done deal. But I think that, since the Republicans can't put up a viable candidate, it's more likely than not that she would be re-elected. She's making it, I would think, more difficult for her. I would have thought that if you're going to fire Crowley, you do it a month from now, 2 months from now. I don't put it this way. Do you really think that she as in Mayor Bass would have been dealing with the same type of scrutiny, the same type of pushback on this particular day if she had not fired Crowley? I think I don't want to use the phrase started her own fire, but that's the only metaphor I can use here. I think she created a situation, Bass did, that was unnecessary, and you could have dealt with Crowley 2 or 3 months from now. In other words, more harm has come to the Bass administration because of firing Crowley at this time and in this way. If she could have just gritted her teeth for another couple of months or so, wait for the official findings, and then said, okay, I now have the predicate, I now have the justification for firing you. And then you can also say, you were never my fire chief to begin with, and now I can fire you for cause, and I have the investigation results and findings to back it up. That's what I would have recommended if I were one of her advisors. We're talking about Kristin Crowley now, and in relation to the future of the Bass administration, only because of the actions of Karen Bass. Where we would have been talking about, I think, in a more general sense, we're talking about what mistakes might have been made, what needs to be done. We'll find out what the investigations say in a more general sense. Now you focus more attention on Bass and trying to get her out. Like, for example, the recall effort, I don't think that is even talked about in a serious way without the firing of Kristin Crowley. I might be wrong, but probably not, because I'm rarely ever wrong. It's Later with Mo Kelly. Don't look at me like that, Mark Runner. I know that you may be skeptical. I think that's the right word. You may be skeptical.
I'm sorry. Were my eyebrows operating independently of my will? Did you catch something there?
Yeah, your eyebrow hit the back of your neck. You raised it so high.
Let me look into that. Heads may need to roll.
KFI AM 640. We are live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. And when we come back, Mark, I got your favorite topic. We got to talk about AI. We got to talk about print media, specifically the LA Times, their intersection, and how AI just might be the downfall of the Los Angeles Times. No exaggeration.
Those poor bastards.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
And it goes without saying that Mark Ronner, I'm using him as a focal point, Mark Ronner is going to be a defender of the press. He's going to be a defender of actual people in the newsroom and the importance of actual information as opposed to misinformation and disinformation. Is that fair, Mark?
Yeah, I'm really sticking my neck out with that one, aren't I?
Yeah, you are, but it's relevant to what we're getting ready to talk about.
Yes. Because
the LA Times has been in the news. When you are giving the news and you are in the news, you've probably done something wrong. You're not supposed to be the story. You're supposed to report the story, not become part of the story. And the LA Times has become part of the story because of their refusal to provide any type of editorial endorsement of either presidential candidate for the 2024 election. And also, I would say the heavy-handedness of its owner, Patrick Soon-Shiong, as far as the direction, editorial direction and news direction of the LA Times. Well, Patrick Soon-Shiong has taken another step, and Monday he announced the use of LA Times Insights, and it's an AI tool which would work parallel to editorials, and I'm just paraphrasing this and condensing it, where you'd have an editorial and then AI would characterize it somewhere on the political spectrum and then also offer other articles and opposing opinions to run alongside the actual editorial, which would be in the LA Times. According to Patrick Soon-Shiong, the owner of the LA Times, who clearly is now invested in what is said in the paper. Historically, you usually would have an owner, but he or she, they would not involve themselves in the actual news process. It was left to the actual news professionals, of which Patrick Soon-Shiong is not one. But this is what he had to say. Quote, "The purpose of Insights is to offer readers an instantly accessible way to see a wide range of different AI-enabled perspectives alongside the positions presented in the article. I believe providing more varied viewpoints supports our journalistic mission and will help readers navigate the issues facing this nation." There are a bunch of, close quote, there are a bunch of problems with that because it wrongly alleges that all viewpoints hold a certain value or a more equitable value. In other words, if I were to write an editorial saying that the earth is spherical, we landed on the moon, we landed on the spherical moon, and then the AI were to put up, well, here's another article which says the earth is flat and we didn't land on the moon. It's a false equivocation that all of these opinions are somehow equal in value or worthy of being positioned on an equal level. That's how I read it. And I'll give you a perfect example. The Insights feature only lasted, about 2 days, because about 2 days in, there was an article from Gustavo Arellano, who has done some on-air work here at KFI, did an article titled 100 Years Ago, Anaheim Recalled Its KKK City Council. Why don't we remember? And the AI Insights, for some reason, sided with the KKK. And don't get me wrong, I know there are people listening right now who do side with the KKK somewhere along the way.
Think they got a bum rap?
Yeah.
Is that the deal?
Yeah. But the point is, see, you get me off my point.
No, I'm with you on this.
No, the point is, it gives a false equivocation that just because there is a viewpoint contrary to the one expressed in the LA Times, it's either valid or worthy of equal placement.
It's almost hard to emphasize how terrible and stupid this is, to the point where we almost need to break it down for people. Like, if you're thinking,
let's break it down. Seriously.
It's his paper. He bought it. He can do whatever he wants. Well, he certainly is. And it's a disaster. There is a wall of separation between the newsroom and the owner, advertisers, and everybody else. The journalists have to have independence so we can trust them and what they write. We shouldn't have to wonder if what we're being told is because of some owner's agenda, right, left, or otherwise, or what advertisers dictate they want. And Patrick Soon-Shiong has no understanding or appreciation of that, or of journalism, or the ethics that go with journalism, or the role of the free press in the United States. He's a disaster. Try to imagine how much the actual journalists who work at the LA Times, the career professionals who take journalism seriously and have devoted their lives to it, how much they must hate this guy, how much he embarrasses them. And where AI comes into this is that Patrick Soon-Shiong clearly doesn't understand what real journalists do. This is the free press equivalent of putting an anti-vaxxer in charge of the Department of Health and Human Services during a measles outbreak.
Not that anyone would ever do that.
No, not that anybody would. You can do it, but these things have serious costs, and he's destroying a legendary Los Angeles giant of journalism, one of the jewels of the state's crown. Other states would love to have an LA Times, and they don't. Now, where this comes into AI is to believe you should rely on AI for your news judgment reveals how awful and disqualifying your news judgment is. Patrick Soon-Shiong is a doctor. Now, imagine me with no medical degree being put in charge of a hospital and just kind of arbitrarily deciding hand washing's optional and you must wear a clown nose instead of a mask during surgeries. You cannot overstate what a disaster and an embarrassment this rich imbecile owner is for the LA Times and how much he's ruining it.
And let's make a distinction here. Yes, it's his paper. Yes, he has the right to run his business as he sees fit. But just from a business standpoint, how many professionals has he lost? How much has he damaged the name and legacy of the LA Times? How many subscribers has he lost? How much money has he lost just in this business endeavor? It is idiotic to run any business counter to the best interests of the business itself.
Oh, yeah. And these are professionals. Bear in mind that the newspaper industry for the last at least 2 decades has been musical chairs. There are no jobs. So for somebody, A, to walk out the door in a precious, precious job at the LA Times, and B, to torch the owner like some of these people have been doing on the way out, you can't overstate how major that is.
Hey, Mark Ronner, can you tell me who owned CBS News in the 1970s?
Who owned it? No.
Yeah. Right. How about NBC or ABC? Just broadcast news.
No, I mean, there's a revolving door of people in charge. You know, like I think William S. Paley, didn't he run CBS for a while? But you never hear about them dictating the news content.
Thank you very much.
Because news was always, especially with the networks on TV, news was the loss leader that they regarded as a public service.
Well, explain for folks who may not know because we said we're going to break it down. A loss leader.
It's not a profit-making entity. It's something that you do that your other entities make up for with their profits because you are performing a public service. And the free press is in the Constitution. It's there to safeguard democracy. We need it.
And you talked about the subsequent involvement of for-profit interests like advertisers, like an owner who is about trying to make money or make sure their pet politics are prominently featured, then you've defeated the whole purpose of news.
Oh, yeah. If you're in a newsroom and you hear that somebody from advertising, say, wants you to emphasize X, Y, or Z, you're like, out of here with that. Who do you think you are? What are you doing?
You would never
find another profession. Are you insane?
You would never.
It's so unheard of. People who don't have much experience behind the scenes at newspapers maybe don't understand what a 4-alarm dumpster fire this is at the LA Times.
What bothers me it is our intransigence as a people, as citizens of the United States, people who've never worked in any facet of news, are determined to tell you and to tell me on a daily basis what news is, how news should be covered, and why they like such and such cable news, which is not even news.
No, you have to have a small and shrinking number of lifetime career professionals who regard it as a calling. And these are people who can't be bought or intimidated. And they choose to do this because they think it's a worthwhile thing to do. And if you want to get up in my face about fake news nonsense because it's something that you personally don't care for, go away. That's not an adult reaction to mainstream news. You need this, and we all need it to make informed decisions just in our day-to-day life.
But that's only back when, facts actually mattered. They don't matter anymore. So news is what you make it. News is what you believe or want to believe or choose to believe.
I guess I'm just a dinosaur, Mo.
No, we all are.
I'm no billionaire. I don't have, apparently I don't have the intelligence to become a billionaire.
Well, we've also falsely conflated an individual's wealth with somehow being either a good person, successful, or more knowledgeable than other people.
We have some current high-profile examples that should disabuse us for life of the notion that getting rich means you're super intelligent. The two may not be...
there's not a causal relationship, and I'm not even sure there's a corollary relationship.
I think you're right.
KFI AM 640. We are live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
Well, it's Later with Mo Kelly on KFI AM 640.
We're live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. And I have a few vices, not as many as I get older, but I have a few. I do like some Jack Daniels. I do. I'll drink some. And Stephen and I, we had some drinks together a few weeks ago. Single barrel, Gentleman Jack, the original. I don't care for like the honey and I don't like the sweet Jack. I just like the more traditional, more bitter tasting whiskey. And the reason I talk about that is I'm going to be aware of what's happening with that product. Last night, for my final thought, talking about the joint session of Congress, the gathering, the speech by President Trump, I said, hey, regardless of how you may like or dislike the speech, there is going to be a response. There's going to be a response in the markets. There's going to be a response from other countries. And that response is going to be far more telling and impactful than our personal preferences about the speech or whether we thought it was good or whether we liked it. Sometimes we forget, we get so insulated by American media that we sometimes we forget that there is a larger world out there and they can impact our world. And here's just one of the examples. Even though President Trump said that he was going to delay the tariffs to Canada for a month, here is an example of the world responding to not only what they heard, also responding to what they may think President Trump may do in the future. Jack Daniels' boss says Ontario removing U.S. alcohol from shelves is worse than tariffs as the Trump threats go into effect. And this is not even the actual tariffs. This is about the threat of the tariffs. The Liquor Control Board of Ontario is removing alcohol from the U.S. from its shelves after the Trump administration's tariffs on Canada and Mexico went into effect on Tuesday night at midnight. The president imposed tariffs of 25% on Canadian goods as well as a 10% tariff on energy. So it's going to go back and forth as far as whether it's an actual threat or an actual tariff. It depends on the industry. But as far as Canada's concerned, it is a 25% tariff on Canadian goods, and they're responding to that. And Ontario put in place a number of measures that it was close to enacting a few weeks ago when the Trump White House came close to taking action on its tariff plans the first time. If you remove these specific products from Canadian shelves, it is going to have a domino effect all the way down alcohol sales in that industry for Jack Daniels and other alcohol distributors. There are going to be real consequences for American companies. It's one thing to say, hey, we're going to put a tariff on all of your goods. Canada has every right to say, you know what, we're not even going to put a tariff on your goods. We're just not going to buy your goods at all. We're going to remove your goods from our shelves. It's one thing, and I used this example before, and I always tease Tawala with this because he understands what I'm referring to. Once you start a fight, be it a physical fight or an economic fight, you get to determine your first move. In other words, I don't like Mark Ronner at all, okay? We just act like we don't like each other. But actually, in truth, we hate each other. So if I walk in one day, I'm kidding, y'all. I'm kidding.
Jesus.
If I walk in one day and we get into a verbal confrontation and I decide to haul off and hit him in the jaw, that's the only choice I get to make. Mark, in response to me swinging on him, doesn't have to say, oh, we're in a boxing match. He may pick up a chair and hit me over the head. He may decide to kick me. He may decide to call the police. But once you start a fight, you don't get to dictate what happens after that fight is started. And you're seeing in that analogy that Canada's saying, oh, no, we don't have to reciprocate with tariffs. We can just say, we're not going to buy your products at all and deal with that. We're not going to pass on that tariff to our consumers or our companies or our liquor dispensaries or stores. We're just not going to buy your products at all. And that's something that I don't know. I'm not exactly sure that the Trump administration has taken into account.
To go deeper with the analogy, imagine if before this fight, you and I had been best pals for decades.
Right.
And you just socked me one out of the blue for no good reason.
Because we're supposedly friends.
Yeah, you just cold cocked me.
that.
I'm coming around the corner and you just let me have it, and I have no idea why you've done this.
And that's actually probably received as even more offensive. Because, look, we're supposed to be boys. We're supposed to have each other's backs. And you just hit me for no reason. You probably take even more umbrage at it.
I probably wouldn't like it. You're correct about that. And what's strange to me is I read as much as I can about the subject because I don't have an economics degree, so I really try to school myself on this. And without exception, every single economist I read says that tariffs are going to be harmful. The cost is going to be passed on to American consumers, and it could lead to a recession or a depression. And a lot of people are scratching their heads about what's going on here and why.
This is my personal theory. If you were listening to the speech last night and we had it live here on KFI, part of the reason I believe President Trump was going through almost line by line every executive action is he needs to somehow soften what I think he knows is going to be a staggering blow economically in the near future for the next few weeks, possibly next few months. And he wants to be able to say, but here I renamed the Gulf of Mexico, but here I signed this executive action that transgender males can't play basketball in women's sports. But here I signed this executive action that there'll be no more DEI. Woke is gone. America's back. That's why I believe he went through those line items of all the executive actions, because the economic reality is not something that he would either feel comfortable discussing or he doesn't want people to focus on. We know what the farmers are going through right now. And we know what you and I are going to go through because of these tariffs. The market has been up and down. It dropped 1,300 points in 2 days, in large part on the announcement of the tariffs. President Trump and the administration pulled back a little bit because of what happened in the markets, I believe. But you can't then put that toothpaste back in the tube, and you have other countries like Canada saying, no, that's okay. That's okay. We just won't buy anything of yours. Now what are you going to do?
Yeah, even such notorious liberal rags as the Wall Street Journal keep pointing out that the United States economy was the envy of the free world under Biden. By the time Biden left, the United States had bounced back from COVID better than any other country in the world, and they don't understand what's happening right now or what the reasons are behind it. It's not been transparent.
Well, part of it is we're so insular with our media. We don't have a global approach as far as looking at our economics. We think about only the America and not how our economy is interdependent with other economies.
We're going to find out the hard way, and sooner rather than later.
KFI AM 640. We're live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app.
If there's news, if things shift, if they stay the same, if things change for better or worse, regardless of what's happening, you're going to hear it here. It's what we do.
KFI.
And KOST HD2.
Los Angeles, Orange County.
Live.